Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Ale. Welcome back to my world of stocks. By the way, just want to quickly apologize for being gone for a little while there. I was actually under the weather. No need to be alarmed, though. I am doing fine now. I just needed to get a little bit of rest, get my health back up to normal. I am doing fantastic now, so don't be concerned. But just want to let you know where I was. Anyway, with that said, I hope you guys are having a great start to your 2022 year. I really hope things start improving just across the board in every sense of the word, and that we all have a fantastic year. In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about some of my favorite video game related stocks. Now, you guys know, or you probably know if you've seen some of my previous videos, that I am a big fan of video games. I've always been kind of a gamer myself, and I personally feel that video games is something that is never going to go away. In fact, I actually think the market will only become much larger over time and into the future. So I thought it would be fun to break down some of my personal favorite video game related stocks at today's prices and for the long term. And to make things a little more fun and interesting, I actually chose two specific stocks that are low risk and more reliable as long term investments. Then I chose two stocks that are medium risk, so kind of middle of the road, a little bit of a balance between risk but also potential. And then I also chose two high risk video game stocks that I do think have a ton of potential, but they are a little bit riskier than some of the others on the list. So, six stocks in total. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoy it. But let's go ahead and start with the two high risk, then we'll do the two medium risk, and then we'll finish off with the two low risk. Let's jump into it. Okay, so starting with the first high risk stock on the list, that's going to be Zynga, ticker symbol ZNGA, who, despite their high risk, this is one of the stocks that I've actually been buying a lot of myself recently, and I will very likely continue to do so since I am currently down about 3% on my position, and you guys know that I love to buy heavier into my stocks that I'm actually down on. Having said that, I'm only down by a very small amount, like I said, only around 3%, because I actually started buying the stock after it had already crashed by a gigantic amount. Currently, Zynga stock is down by almost 40% over the past year and more than 50% down from their highest level. And personally, I think this is leading to an amazing buying opportunity. Zynga has a massive portfolio of games that are available across 175 different countries and have been downloaded over 4 billion times on mobile. Granted, their international presence is not as large as their US one, but it is at least growing faster. Last quarter, sales grew by a whopping 46% internationally, which is higher than the 36% growth that they saw domestically, although, 36% is still super nice growth too. Anyway, speaking of their business, their stockpile of games includes longtime popular legacy games like Zynga Poker, Farmville, Draw Something, and Words with Friends. I've actually been playing a ton of Words with Friends myself lately, but you've probably come across some of those games. Anyway, they also have newer ones, especially licensed games with brands like Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and even Star Wars, which is also a game that is even coming to the Nintendo Switch console. As a result of this massive reach, along with the global health issue resulting in more people staying home and being on their phones, their sales have exploded in recent years by around 50% on average. And while they sometimes struggle with profitability and there is an expectation that sales growth will fall back down as we recover from the global health issue, I still think that there is a lot of long term potential for a company like this just because of the rise of mobile gaming, which has already overtaken over half of the entire gaming market. So you just add it all up and you look at the future of gaming and you consider how glued people are to their phones. And I just think Zynga has a head start on a lot of the competition that will help them stay competitive in an otherwise very saturated market. Don't be surprised if they even get acquired at some point by some larger company in the future that wants to gain a bigger presence in mobile. Speaking of which, high risk stock number two is actually a giant company that recently acquired a smaller mobile developer, and that is Electronic Arts, ticker symbol EA. And the smaller company that they recently acquired is Glue Mobile, which was a mobile gaming stock that I had actually owned in the past myself, and I've always kind of liked them. So now being able to get the larger exposure of Electronic Arts combined with the higher growth of a mobile player all under one roof, that's a pretty compelling proposition. Now, obviously, EA is famous for their giant video games that sell huge amounts year after year, like Madden, FIFA, Battlefield. They've got a UFC game. They even have a couple Star Wars games too. But to be unbiased, I have to admit that as an actual gamer myself, I personally really do not like Electronic Arts because of how horribly they've mismanaged their license with Star Wars and how they continuously try to take advantage of their customers through microtransactions and other shady practices. But the good news is that that incompetence and negative press has actually helped keep the stock price suppressed and a lot lower than it probably otherwise would be if management wasn't doing such a horrible job. And as such, they are still trading lower than they were even a few years back in 2018, and they currently sit in the bottom half of their 52-week range, down close to 15% from that high. So at this point, I do think that this is turning into a decent buying opportunity since EA is not actually lacking in any potential. They're just a horribly mismanaged company that can easily turn things around if they would just stop making so many incredibly dumb mistakes. They've got this massive backlog of game IPs as a foundation. I think the last time I checked, they had like 5 of the top 20 best-selling game franchises of all time, and FIFA and Sims, those make up the top 8. And now that they've acquired Glue Mobile, they have another source for future growth in mobile gaming as well, as the acquisition adds close to 800 new employees, about 500 of which are mobile game developers. And while EA already held a large presence in mobile gaming with popular titles like The Sims Mobile and Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, adding Glue's large portfolio of mobile games on top of that will help give the giant some much needed growth. As you can see, over the past 4 years, EA's financials are typically stagnant and they rely on the occasional hit title game to bring in any new spurt of growth. And even in 2020, when EA had one of their best years, growing sales by about 16%, Glue Mobile was still growing at nearly double the rate. So I just think that when you combine the two together and you get it for a stock price that has been somewhat suppressed over the years, that can leave the potential for surprise to the upside over the long term. And I think that's what makes EA very interesting at today's prices. Okay, now moving on to the two medium risk stocks. We talked about EA having some of the best selling games of all time. Well, how about going with a company that has the number 1, the number 2, and the number 4 highest grossing video game franchises of all time with Nintendo, ticker symbol NTDOY, who partly owns Pokemon at number 1, wholly owns Mario at number 2, and then also owns Wii games at number 4, although those aren't really new games these days, but Pokemon and Mario are still a force to be reckoned with among many other original IPs. In fact, the newest Pokemon games, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, sold a massive 6 million units in just the first week of release, making it one of the fastest selling Nintendo games ever, and that's despite the fact that they're actually a remake of older games, and they were even outsourced to an outside company to develop them because the main team for Pokemon is already working on a much larger sort of open world style game called Pokemon Legends Arceus that releases later this month. The thing about Nintendo though is that they're considered more of a cyclical gaming stock than some of the others out there, and that's because Nintendo not only releases their own video games, but they also make their own game consoles, hence why the stock skyrocketed on the success of the original Wii console, then it crashed off the failure of the Wii U console, and then it skyrocketed again on the success of the Nintendo Switch console. And this correlates perfectly with how much each of those consoles sold. The Wii sold a massive over 100 million units, then the Wii U flopped at only 13 million units before the Switch came back extremely strong at close to 100 million units once again. And it still has a lot of life left in it, so it's definitely on track to surpass the original Wii very soon. Yet, when you zoom in on the stock, it's been dipping a bit recently, falling by about 30% this past year, leaving them now down right near the bottom of their 52-week range. This is because investors are worried that the Switch has sold all the units it can sell, and it's now time for another down cycle. But I actually think that most of that cyclicality has already been priced in, and right now is probably a good time to start buying if you're thinking long term. First of all, sales are not likely to plummet by a proportionate amount to how much the stock has already crashed. Nintendo is now releasing minor changes to their consoles like they did with the Switch Lite and the Switch OLED. So it's more of a platform with upgrades than it is just a single console generation that can help kind of stabilize sales a bit. And I don't think it'll be much longer, to be honest, before a Switch Pro or some kind of next gen version of the Nintendo Switch will be added to the mix as well. Plus, they also have a new online service with multiple price tiers that has already accumulated over 30 million paid subscribers. Granted, the cyclicality is still going to have some effect. Sales are expected to fall by 10% this year, ending in March, and then be flat for a whole nother year after that. But with the stock already down over 30%, that leaves a lot of room for surprising to the upside. There's about to be yet another Pokemon game release that will likely sell like crazy. They're likely to announce a new Mario Kart game at some point too, since the last one is already 7 years old and continues to sell more than most other brand new games. And they still have new Zelda and Metroid games on the horizon as well. Plus, management has repeatedly said that they'll be investing more heavily on theme parks and movies, just like they are doing with Super Nintendo World in Japan and movies for both Pokemon and Mario. And they may even become a bigger metaverse play as well in the future, just because of how open world and customizable some of their games are, like, for example, Animal Planet New Horizons, where you can build your own house and go island hopping and much more. The near term cyclical issues should not be overlooked, and it's possible that the stock could fall even a little bit more from here, but there's a chance that sales will start to kind of stabilize a bit as they become more diversified as a company. And when you got a P ratio of just around 15, you're talking about Nintendo now essentially being one of the cheapest game stocks out there, at least amongst their peers. Like, for example, they're even cheaper than Microsoft, Sony, and even non console players like Take Two, EA, and Activision. At this point, Nintendo is just too good of a value play to ignore if you're talking about the best long term gaming stocks available right now. Okay, now for the other medium risk stock, the risk of it will actually come from the fact that it's a Chinese stock, but the potential to balance it out will come from the fact that the stock is super low right now, despite this being one of the absolute largest and most dominant gaming companies in the world. And that is, of course, Tencent, ticker symbol TCEHY. Now, it's a stock that has crashed by over 40% at this point from its highs, and it currently sits right at the bottom of its 52-week range. And this is mostly because of Chinese regulators cracking down on some of the big tech giants in the country. In Tencent's case, a recent example was when the Chinese government summoned them to remind them of screen time limits for children playing video games, and they proceeded to slow down the approval of new video games as well, and that kind of hurt them. But I still continue to believe that this is one of the best gaming stocks, and even just regular stocks in general, if you're trying to own it long term. Not only do they have extremely solid growth on both the top and bottom line, with another close to 20% revenue growth expected both this year and the next, but they also have the third largest social media market share in the world, only behind Facebook and Google. They have the second most market share of Chinese mobile payments, only behind Alibaba. They command the fifth most cloud market share in the world, the second most market share of mobile messaging after Facebook. And then when you look at gaming, they control over half of the entire Chinese gaming market, and they're even the leader in gaming revenue in the entire world, even ahead of other giants like Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Activision, EA, Take Two. Take your pick. They make more money than them. It's pretty crazy. And that's in large part thanks to Tencent's overarching kind of conglomerate approach to gaming, where they basically invest in other gaming companies and then profit off of them. So, for example, they fully acquired Riot Games, which gave them the super popular esports title League of Legends. They own 40% of Epic Games, which gave them the very popular game Fortnite, as well as the Epic Game Store and the Unreal Engine, which is used for developing tons of other games and then collecting fees from them. And they even acquired Supercell, who is the mobile game developer behind Clash of Clans. You add all of that up along with the falling stock price and everything else that Tencent does, and I just think this is one of the best long term stocks to own, and I'm happy to actually own it myself as well. All right, now that leaves us with the final two low risk options. And first up, I'm going to go with a company that you may not initially think of as having a gaming related business, but over the long term, I think it's actually going to play a very large role in the future of gaming, as they are also one of the largest, if not the largest, play on the future of the metaverse. And that's going to be Meta, ticker symbol FB, otherwise known as Facebook. And the reason why is simple. Meta already has over 3.5 billion people across all their different platforms, and they can potentially leverage all those people, at least many of them, into their new virtual metaverse platform, where I think that gaming will likely be a huge component of through the use of virtual reality, which Meta also happens to command the most market share of through Oculus at over half of the entire market. And by the way, Facebook has had a long history of offering video games through the platform as well. So you know that they're going to heavily integrate more games into the metaverse over time. In fact, gaming was one of the most heavily discussed parts of their metaverse presentation that showcased games related to music, ping pong, surfing, and more. Granted, the stock is not anywhere near as big of a dip as some of the other stocks that we've seen on today's list, but they are at least down about 14% from their highs, so a nice little double-digit dip there. Plus, they were already fairly cheap to begin with a PEG ratio of less than 1, which is unbelievably cheap for such a gigantic company that is already doing over $100 billion in sales per year and is still managing to grow at over 30% this year and close to 20% still next year as well, with one of the also absolute best balance sheets in the entire market to go along with it. That alone makes it one of the least risky stocks to bet on long term for the future of gaming. And finally, you guys know that I couldn't make a gaming stocks list without my personal favorite stock in the entire market, even just in general, and that is, of course, Microsoft, ticker symbol MSFT. Not sure why I'd even have to explain the low risk nature of this one, but in case you're not aware, Microsoft is one of the safest long term stocks out there just because of how incredibly reliable of a business they have, with the second most cloud market share only behind Amazon, the most computer operating system market share with Windows, the most office productivity software with Office, and they're even a big play in both the video conferencing market with Teams as well as various artificial intelligence related markets as well. However, this is a gaming related video, and for that, we turn over to Xbox, where Microsoft has revamped their entire gaming division in an effort to dominate the future of gaming. In doing so, they've now acquired over 20 different game studios just to beef up their library of first party games in order to attract more gamers. That's something that only a gigantic company like Microsoft can do thanks to their unbelievable financials. You're talking almost $170 billion in sales, with over 60 billion of that going straight to the bottom line just in the past year alone. That is insane. They've also gone all in on game streaming with xCloud that uses their already massive cloud infrastructure, as well as Xbox Game Pass that aims to become the sort of Netflix of gaming and has already surpassed over 20 million paid subscribers, and it's probably even higher than 30 million by now. You add all of that up, and the stock is basically always a buy in my opinion. It rarely ever dips, so good luck waiting for a big drop outside of maybe a market-wide crash or correction. Right now it's down about 10% from its highs, and that's probably a good enough dip to buy if you're thinking long term, because it just usually is with a company and a stock like Microsoft. Anyway, there you have it, guys. Those are my favorite long-term gaming related stocks as of right now, and broken down into 2 high risk, 2 medium risk, and 2 low risk. Did the best I could to pick out some of the best ones out there, but let me know if you agree or disagree. And if you disagree, let me know what stocks you would replace with something else. I'd love to hear that, because then I can make future videos on some of those stocks as well. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you're all doing well out there. I will catch you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.